Yes. What's up, my friends? Oh man, take two. The first take I was chewing on a whole bunch of nuts and it sounded really gross, and I'm not gonna put y'all through it. I'm not gonna do it. So, welcome back to the ecoChristian podcast. We're exploring what it means to be Christian on planet Earth. I'm your host, Caleb Cray Haynes, and for me right now, if you're listening to this on time, this last weekend was All Saints weekend. If you're keeping score at home on the Christian calendar, that's All Saints Day, typically celebrated on November 1st, or the Sunday closest to, right? The day after All Hallows Day, the day after All Hallows Eve, right? Hallows meaning saints, the Eve of All Saints. But also, let's be honest, Halloween, a day where some Christians get up in arms about it, but I find it to be just a good time to let my kids romp around their neighborhood and get free candy. Although it's a conversation, and to be honest, I ended up just jolly on the spot the other day with blood in my veins, writing this whole Substack about the candy companies, friends, and I'm tempted to do a whole episode on the candy companies, but we're not going to do it right now. But if you want to read that Substack, I'd love to have you on over to the ecoChristian Outpost, and I'm pretty sure it's already linked in the show notes if you want to check it out. But friends, in 2025, as I live and breathe, candy companies this Halloween are raking in $3.9 billion. All right, $3.9 billion of candy that we're buying to probably ultimately end up in the trash can, because ain't nobody eating that much candy, nor should you, friends. So the whole system is upside down. Anyway, it's a soapbox. We're not going to go there, but there is a stark juxtaposition right now with the millions of Americans who just lost their SNAP benefits on one hand, and this other thing on the other hand. Anyway, something to marinate on, my friends. So, okay. Today is a pretty cool day because, number one, this is episode 50. We have done this 50 times, and that might not seem like a big number to you, but from where I'm sitting, that's a thing to celebrate. I mean, that's no small thing. So, episode 50, y'all. So today, we're having this conversation, and you know, we may not often see all the ways our lives are intertwined with the animals of God's creation. But it's not just our agriculture or even the ecosystems around us that depend on these creatures. But even today, if you take medicine, right, that medication, yes, it's something that is created out of creation, with creation, but also, friends, animals play a critical and crucial role in offering that medication to us. And this is kind of a little taste of what we get into today with Caroyln Dugan, who is a friend of mine, animal lover, who wears the hat of science and clergy. And this is just such a unique conversation, and I'm so excited to share it with you all. So without further ado, here we go. Okay, wonderful, friends. Today, I'm joined by Caroyln Dugan, and we go back about a year, but I really enjoyed getting to know Caroyln in a cohort we were in together. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm tired. That seems to be my normal.
Yeah. No, I feel that. I feel that so hard. Yeah, our kids just finished fall break, and it's like a marathon. So it's wild. And you have kids too, right?
I do. I have one daughter who is out of school now and kind of adulting. So she's finding her path in the adult world.
You're on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let me share a little bit about you, just so our listeners will get some context, and then we'll kind of jump into it. But Reverend Caroyln Dugan is currently the talent development manager for LabCorp in North America, as well as the associate regional minister of outdoor ministries for American Baptist Churches of Wisconsin. And Carolyn has been a part of the region staff there at Camp Tamarack since 2012. Did I say that right, Tamarack?
Yeah.
And awesome. And so she has a Master's of Divinity from Central Baptist Theological Seminary, is ordained by the Federated Church of Green Lake, and was recently accepted into the D-Min in Creative Leadership program at Central that begins next year, which sounds really cool. Carolyn lives on a 5-acre, quote, farmette with her husband, Jim, along with many furry and feathery creatures. I love that, including a dog, cats, goats, many horses, donkey, a peafowl. I'm not even sure what a peafowl is, to be honest. And sounds really great. I'm excited to get into this. And I see that your original degree is in zoology, which sounds really awesome. And she is known as Pastor in the Pasture with her ministry with her animals and connecting people to the Creator through creatures in the outdoors. So I love all that. I love what you're doing. This just is all very heartwarming. So yeah, wonderful. How's your fall going so far?
Fall is good. It's interesting. So living on a farm, I get to observe how the animals are preparing for fall. So it's interesting watching the barn cats kind of find their spaces where they're going to stay warm over the winter, to watch how the hoofstock are already starting to like grow their fur for the colder weather. It feels like they just shed it all off, and now they're growing it all back on. And I'm now looking forward to daylight savings. I don't really want to do chores in the dark in the morning and at night, but I also know it's good for the rest of the land and of the animals, and just, they're not going all the time either. So it's fun to watch fall just shift, and how we all just shift into that time.
Yes, I can feel the slowing down of, that the darkness brings. 100%. Yeah. Well, so as I mentioned, Carolyn and I were both in the same kinship circle, like you do, in Eco Preacher cohort a year ago. And, I just feel like we all need more kinship circles in our lives. It's just, it's a good thing. And, I want to get into your story, but I'm curious if there's anything you'd be willing to share of, like, we were talking about just briefly a minute ago, but like how that was for you. Because you're also not necessarily in a lot of preaching spaces, right?
Right. Yeah. So I am Reverend Carolyn, but basically my ministry is the camp, where I'm the associate regional minister of outdoor ministries. I do a lot of behind the scenes. I do a lot of the logistics at camp. They don't tell you in seminary that someday you're going to have a favorite plunger to help with all of the retreats and the groups and things like that are there. So I do pulpit supply, and I do that for the region, if they need help there.
Oh, cool.
But I am finding a lot of my outlets is being able to kind of write things down with the pastor in the pasture, or kind of share my story in that realm. And at camp, like, I also support other pastors because they come and lead retreats, or they lead the programming. And my big job at camp is to really support my staff and the dreams that they have, and working with the DNR and all of that. So, there's a lot of logistics.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I'll give a little plug here to what we were referring to. The BTS Center does an Eco Preacher cohort that I guess I've technically graduated to facilitator, a circle facilitator this year, but it's definitely something that if you're listening, you should check out if this sounds even mildly interesting, because it's just a really great opportunity. It's like a once a month get together with over 100 other Christians from around who are all wrestling with this area around eco preaching. Anyway, we could get into that, but it's really good. There we go. So yeah, I'm just I love all the things that you've studied and you've done and you're doing. So maybe we just start. I'd love to hear, just how much ever you'd be willing to share about your own story and how you kind of found your way into this, niche kind of eco-Christian space with me here, and and where you're from and all that.
Yeah. So, gosh, my story. I grew up in the city of Monroe, Wisconsin, which is the Swiss cheese capital of the world. It has on their sign. So I grew up being a cheesemaker, which that was our mascot. Like that was our school mascot. We were the cheesemakers. But I think I have always loved animals. I have always had animals as a part of. I remember begging my parents for cats and then trying to save baby birds growing up, and just, I had a dog named Lady, and, all of these things that were just important to me. I thought I was going to be a veterinarian. Did not work out that way, for various reasons, but ended up with that degree in zoology, which, I thought, again, maybe I would work at a zoo or I would do different things, but I actually ended up with a cat when I was in high school that had feline leukemia, and there was no cure. There was really no treatment for her. And she ended up being humanely euthanized after her quality of life declined and all of that. And, I'm in the high school years, formative years, and that just really made an impact on me. And I wanted to work on the bench, and I wanted to be somebody that would find that cure or that would help somebody or something with that. So I did end up, at the time it was Hazelton Labs, then it became Covance, and now we were bought by LabCorp. So I've been with that company for about 25 years on and off, working in the lab and just, finding ways to help people's quality of life. I know that animal research can be an emotional topic for people. It's also emotional for those of us that work in the lab. And I had to find coping mechanisms, but I also know the good that it outweighs, and how it helps quality of life, not just for people. Like, I have a story about my dad who hit his head cleaning his garage. My dad had to have brain surgery because he cleaned his garage.
Oh, my word.
Yeah. So he had bleeding on 2 spots of his brain, because he hit his head that hard on the table saw, and again had to have surgery. When he came out of surgery, he had a seizure, which then meant he couldn't drive for 6 months and all of that. I went to our resource management group of Covance at the time and said, "Hey, my dad takes these 5 drugs. Can you tell me if I worked on any of them?" Because in the lab, we don't know what the brand name is going to be. We just know it by a code name from the company or whatever. And out of the 5 drugs that my dad took and still takes one, I worked on 3 of them. So I worked on studies that helped my dad, be around longer to annoy me and to spend time with his grandkids and fishing and, all of play pickleball now. All of those things that he does. But I don't think people really understand how much research touches your life. Talking with high school kids about, how do you know when you washed your hair this morning that the shampoo wasn't going to make your hair fall out? And I know that there are bottles that say not tested on animals, and true, maybe that formulation, however, each ingredient was, because it needs to be legally. That's the U.S. law and guidance and USDA, FDA, EPA, all of that thing. But we also need to care then for these animals that we need in research. And, I ended up then working for this company for a long time in the lab, and I just love the animals. And I know that there's misconceptions about, crazy scientists and all of that, but you need people in the lab that care about the animals so that they are less stressed, so that they have enrichment, so that they are not having like hormone spikes or anything like that when we're looking at the data to help human beings and also to help other animals in the world. So a lot of advancements have been done through that work.
Wow. I'm so curious about this. And to be honest, like it's, I think a lot of people have kind of peripherally thought about this just for random moments here and there around it. And so it's really fascinating to hear someone who works in the space. I wonder if you'd share a little bit more about that and about, I think about like, are there, like, what types of animals are you working with? Is there a high, like, animal mortality rate? Are these animals living their best lives? Are they glowing with radiation and purple and I mean, like, it's just I feel like I've got nothing here. Yeah, I just wondered if you'd share a little bit more about just your perspective on how that works.
Yeah. It's like you said, it's one of these things that people kind of know happens, but don't know what happens. So the animals are all purpose bred. We don't go to people's backyards and, take somebody's dog for a study. Like, I know that there are animal rights groups that would like you to think that that's what happens. The animals are purpose bred for work. So it's mostly, if you have 100 animals in a room, about 95 of them would be rats or mice. That's what most of the research is done on. Like one might be a dog, 0.3 would be a primate, and then you have other species like zebrafish, you have hamsters, you have rabbits, you have all of that. So the majority of animals that are used in research are rats and mice. And those numbers continue to go down as we refine the work that we do as well. So we follow the 3 R's of refine, reduce, and reuse. And then LabCorp and my personal, we also have like the 4th R is our responsibility to these animals, to this creation that we use. So we are trying to reduce, and I say we because I'm a part of a bigger organization, the mortality of the animals. So sometimes on studies, we do have to have a humane endpoint, which is a necropsy. The animals are humanely euthanized. And then there's a necropsy where we have to look at, is the drug causing like enlargement of the heart or liver problems? And the only way we can see that is at the cellular level. So there will be like some histopathology things that are done where we'll look at, so anatomic pathologists will look at the slides to see, is this normal? Is this not normal? So kind of the same thing like cancer patients go through when a biopsy is done or whatever. With the animals, we need to like look at everything, because if you have a headache and if you take medicine, you don't want it to cause your liver to enlarge and then have issues later, just because of a headache. So for example, I used to have a greyhound who had seizures, and he would take phenobarbital. And by the end of his life, he was taking about 8 pills in the morning and 8 pills at night. Wow. It was helping his quality of life, but I also knew the payoff would be he would have liver damage towards the end. So we would watch his quality of life. We would look at all those things. So what we're looking for is how effective, this is, the efficacy of the drug, and then like how efficient it is. Like how often do you need to get? It's a pill that you have to take like, I don't know, once an hour. Nobody wants to do that. But then to your question about, are the animals glowing? And that that we don't do cosmetic testing. Like that is something that, again, is something that animal rights groups would like you to think that, these scientists are, putting mascara on rabbits. We are not doing that. But what we are doing is making sure that what is on the market is safe for people. And what that is. The animals, I mean, the thing that I say is, my animals on my farm, I can't tell you the last time I washed my dog's water bowl. Like, yeah, it's dirty, I wash it, but in the lab, everything is highly regulated, and the technicians just, I have some favorite rats. I have some favorite hamsters. Like, there are just so many animals that I have had the pleasure and the privilege of working with over the years that, again, have led to better quality of life for people.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, man, this is such a fascinating discussion and intersection around, increased well-being, and of course, like weighing the outcomes, and obviously, anytime you watch a commercial with all the side effects, you're like, you're sort of like, wow, would I really take that? Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't, and it's and it's wild to think about these
Yeah.
animals.
Well, and one thing for people to realize is you only need, like, I want to say 2 weeks worth of data, 14 days to dose one dose in a human, which is not a lot of data. That's not a lot of information to dose in a human being. So, we need as much information as we possibly can, because what happens then once you're in, so we're kind of in like preclinical with the animals, toxicology and all of that, is when it gets to in human, you want to make sure you know what those side effects are if possible. And yes, animals cannot tell us if they have a headache, but there are signs. If an animal presses its head up against, a cage or whatever, you can tell that it's trying to relieve the pressure. So we do observations daily. Like, the animals are looked at least twice a day, sometimes more, with what's going on. So, yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating. It's so 14 days. It's like that's with tested with humans for 14 days before.
No, there's only 14 days of data in an animal, and then you can dose in a human being one dose.
Okay, I see. Oh, wow, that's a really short time.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. What if on day 15, like, your brain explodes and yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Wow. Well, the more you know. Okay. Well, I have so many other questions, but we're not going to go there.
Yeah.
But maybe we'll come back. So continue your story. Sorry.
Yeah. So I guess so I've been working with LabCorp and that since like 1994 is when I graduated with my zoology degree, got my first adult job, and kind of been there with the company for a long time. But I will say, like, growing up, I also worked at the dog tracks in the Wisconsin. So, spending lots of times with greyhounds and seeing how that works. I worked at vet clinics, all of that. But then in 2012, so my grandpa was a Baptist minister, a very well-respected Baptist minister in the Wisconsin region. And I was at somebody's retirement party, and they asked, who will be the next Keith Epps? And that's my grandpa's name. And for whatever reason, and we were at this camp, at Camp Tamarack, they were retiring, and it just hit me like hard. And I'm a Gen X. I'm not really a crier. But the emotions just kind of overtook me. And I went to the Vespers area and I wrote that down. Who will be the next Keith Epps? And I carried that piece of paper for about 2 years because I didn't know what that meant for me or for the region or for camp or whatever. And then in 2010, I found Central Baptist Theological Seminary that had online courses because I had a full-time job. I had a young child. And I'm like, I feel like I need to do something with this. So 2010, I started seminary. And it was, Friday nights and Saturday mornings for several weeks for the semesters and, 1 or 2 classes at a time. So it took me about 6 years to get through that. But in the meantime, in 2012, the person that has the job that I have now retired. And jokingly, the summer before, I said, hey, someday I want your job. She called me that December and said, are you sure? Because I'm retiring. You should apply. So I did. And I've been then with the camp now, which has also evolved since 2012.
Wow. That's really cool. I'm curious, after, so doing the zoology, like, God has obviously just gifted you with this just love and care and spirit for God's creatures, and then you go to seminary. Did you end up kind of wrestling with a sort of a theology of animals and that sort of thing? And did that end up helping or creating conflict in the work that you do with LabCorp and that sort of thing? Like, I'm curious how you sort of navigated that.
Yeah, no, that's a question I actually get asked a lot when I say, hey, I'm a scientist and I'm a pastor. And my answer really kind of focuses on like I can hold both very loosely. But I can tighten that grip if I need to on one or the other, so I'm not a literalist when it comes to creation and that kind of thing. So I'm more like I can see the evolution of things. I can see God's influence in things. I did get to go to Israel once, and I spent some time. And what impacted me the most, which will make people laugh, there were two areas. One was the southern steps of the temple, just where Jesus had taught. Like just sitting on those southern steps was just amazing. But the other was we were in Caesarea Philippi, and I was looking kind of out, and I saw this animal, and I'm like, what is that? I asked the tour guide, and he's like, well, that's a rock badger. He goes, yeah, it's in the Psalms. And I'm like, it is? Rock badgers are called out like specifically in the Psalms? And he's like, yeah. So Psalm, I think it's 104:18. I kind of wrote it down beforehand just to make sure.
Nice.
The fact that I was like in the Bible for a minute, like I was in that space, just really connected with me. And then as I was in seminary and thinking about creation, that word stewardship, the word dominion, all of that, and how we interpret that word, to me is very much I am here to care for. I am not here to take over. I am not here to, all of that. And when I was in one of my zoology classes, I'll never forget my professor talking about how animals were here first. And if you think about the creation story, like the animals were here first. We put in these roads, we put in these boundaries, we put in all of these things. The animals don't know how to behave. They don't know that I'm not supposed to cross the road here or there. So how do we then understand how they behave and how they are built in order to be stewards of them and take care of them, and all of those pieces really influenced. And I still think back to that when he, that's not my theology professor. That's one of my zoology professors saying, hey, animals are here first. They don't know what we're trying to do to them. How do we cohabitate with that at that same time?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And yeah, I can see how there is a lot to wrestle with, and thinking about being good custodians of creation and our sort of kinship with creation and animals. And I can see that there's a tension because I think we tend to think now like animals exist for our quote unquote use, right? And there's sort of that hierarchy, is that something that you wrestle with some in your work at LabCorp as well? Like, like this sort of kinship versus use.
Yeah, no,
I'm just digging a little bit.
Yeah, no, it 100% is. And that's why I try very hard not to say that we use animals, because to me that kind of connotates I'm using them, I throw it away. Like it's done. I use something up and I throw it away. We need animals. Like we need that relationship. We need that back and forth and that interconnectedness and all of that. So that's kind of how I have come across and kind of built my approach to things is we need all of creation together. We don't use creation. We work interconnectedly with it.
I love that. And honestly, I mean, it's so cool that you're in that job because, in my opinion, like who could be a better advocate, I think, for God's creatures in that position than someone like yourself. So I think that's really cool. Yeah. So I'd love to hear about Camp Tamarack and what it is and your role there and how that sort of intermingles with creation care as well, if that feels like an overlap.
Yeah, definitely. So Camp Tamarack, we are on 130 plus acres on the chain of lakes in Wapaka, Wisconsin. The camp, I think, had over 300 acres when it was purchased in 1958. But over time, we have sold land to the DNR. So it is now protected as well. And then there's cost to upkeep and that kind of thing. So we don't get that cost. but we also now know that that land is kind of taken care of in that respect. But of those 130 acres, I want to say maybe 10 of them have buildings on them, that kind of thing. The rest are different regions, so we have a managed forestry plan with the DNR. When we purchased the land, it was farmland that they then planted pine trees on. We've had many kind of tree harvests over the years, which has been a great way to be stewards of the land and the space. Right now, that's kind of coming to an end-ish as we're waiting for some red pines to grow up, and white pines like on their own without the deer coming to eat them all. So that's an interesting dilemma when, the DNR is telling me, well, if you have a controlled hunt, that will fix this. And I'm like, how will a controlled hunt fix this? The deer just wander through. Like, I can't fence in all 130 some acres, so we have discussions on how best to manage those pieces of it. We have a lot of like prairie land that we're trying to cultivate more and more into kind of wildflowers to help our pollinator friends. We recently spotted a blue Carter butterfly on the property, which is an endangered butterfly. So we have some spaces that we're trying to work with. I just want to kind of, my staff, Laura and Megan, who are part of the team, they're very minded this way as well. So it's really nice having a group that are all kind of, this is what we want to do with this space while we have it, and can curate, and just being able to share this with people and give them information on how the land changes. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had what we called the Unbelievable weekend, where people came to see the leaves changing and all of that. And we had people going, well, this is where the bog was, right? And I'm like, it was, but it's not there anymore because the land reclaims things change and shift, and trees do this and the springs do that. And where you thought the bog was, now there's a bog over here that, we could do, but there isn't. And it's just been amazing in my tenure to see kind of what's shifted and changed as well within the camp space.
Yeah. Tell me more about what your role actually looks like day to day there.
Yeah, so I started just as the director of programming in 2012, which just meant that I helped bring in what volunteers we needed to run the programming. So we have camps for different age groups. I would get the volunteer pastor, the volunteer director, the volunteer cabin leaders, health officer. I would hire the summer staff, so we would have people that were lifeguards, craft barn, kitchen, all of that. So my job was really very seasonal with just kind of the summer programming. And every once in a while in the winter, there was like maybe a winter youth retreat or something like that. And then over the years, it's kind of shifted and evolved where now I kind of oversee everything. I oversee the facilities, I oversee the property, I oversee the programming, retreats, the regulations. We are inspected by the state of Wisconsin. I have to follow those regulations. We try to follow the ACA, the American Camp Association guidelines. We're not accredited, but we try to follow them as best that we can, and then add in like any ministry type pieces as far as like safety for the campers, just from like sexual abuse, those that maybe are dealing with body autonomy issues. We don't know what our campers are coming to us with. We don't know what they're going home to. All we know is we get them for that time. And what I like to tell the staff and the team is just be Jesus for them as best you can, and just listen. You don't have to have all the right answers. You don't have to fix their problems. Just be there with them in the space, because I feel like the camp space is healing in its own way for people.
Is it mostly kind of youth that are using this camp, or is there programming that you guys do in that, or?
Yeah, so it started off mostly youth programming, where we would have primary middler camps. Those are your first, second, third, and fourth graders, junior, fifth and sixth, junior high, seventh and eighth, and then senior high, 9th through 12th. But we are a reflection of our churches, and our churches' youth is declining. So there aren't as many youth in the churches that are coming to camp. So we are starting to shift to be more intergenerational. In Wisconsin, we have different ethnicity type of churches as well, and they're not as willing to like send my kid off. We come as a family, like this is what we do and this is how we do it. So we're trying to offer more kind of intergenerational type things. So just as an example, we did a stargazing camp in August during the Perseid meteor shower. So we shifted the whole schedule later, so that we stayed up later and then got up later and had breakfast or brunch type thing and all that. But then the whole family could come and be together. And my daughter was our own personal astrophysicist who came and gave us talks about the night sky and the things that we were seeing.
Wow, that sounds really great. Yeah, you mentioned that. You mentioned the leaf, week. Yeah, that's. Are there other things like that where you're kind of highlighting creation or trying to, as a Christian camp, kind of hone in on some of that?
Yeah, we're trying to. So a couple of the things that we've done as we think about being a Christian camp, I held off getting internet at camp for as long as I possibly could. I needed it for my LabCorp job, so I had it in my cabin. But we really tried to disconnect the campers from the internet, from social media, from all of that, so that they could just spend time and be still in creation. I have directors that spend a lot of time and energy trying to help get them in nature and touching nature and smelling nature. I don't let them lick the nature, but they can touch it and smell it and be in it. So we're definitely trying. And we also talk about things like we have clean drinking water at camp. So I really try hard not to let people buy bottled water and bring it. We don't need to buy water. We don't need to recycle. We don't need to do all of those things. But I think sometimes there's this safety and security piece, especially for people that might live in cities that don't necessarily have clean, like well water, which we do have, and it gets tested and all of those pieces. So we also try to educate even the adults and the retreats that come as well with, no, you don't need to, just try it. Try our drinking water. It's fine. You don't need to buy that.
Man, that is just so huge. I feel like I'm talking about this all the time right now, but how important it is to help our kids reconnect, disconnect from screens and reconnect with creation, and just how important that is, especially in those developmental years, as kids and teens and preteens, and there's so much research on that now, and that's why I think like camps like this are just so important. And so I said this last week we were our kids were on fall break, and we went camping for a couple nights, and we're not like an amazing camping family or anything. I'm the biggest camper, but we went for a couple nights down to a local state park here in Tennessee, and Tennessee has just really great state parks, which is a lot of fun. But we invited another family, and the other little girl brought a fishing pole, so they're just spending the whole time fishing there, kind of on the Duck River. My daughter caught her first fish and stuff like that. But it's just I noticed after that, those couple days, like how, and also just how much of a better mood my kids are, and my kids don't, like, they don't have cell phones and that kind of thing. We're already trying to really mitigate their screen time and whatnot, but just being like situated out in creation physically for a couple of days, it's visible good news for our kids and for us.
Yeah, we actually take, if campers do come with cell phones, we take them. Like, they know ahead of time that we're going to do this. But we take them, and what's funny to me now is at first it was the kids that were really struggling, and we would always laugh because when we did cabin inspections, we would find like phone chargers, and instead of taking their phone, we would just take their charger, and then their phone would slowly die. And we would watch,
That's so clever.
like figure that out. But it has now shifted from the kids, because the kids will gladly hand over their cell phones. It's the parents. The parents are really struggling with letting their kids have some autonomy and kind of be free in that nature, because it's somewhat unknown to them a little bit. And they want to be able to track or to call or to check on or whatever. And I try very hard to reassure the parents that your kids are fine. If something happens, I will be there. I will take care of them. I will let you know all of those pieces. But it's been really interesting to me to see it kind of shift over the years of who has the anxiety over that, social media connectedness, all of that, and just trying to get people to, disconnect a little bit. And again, be still and know.
That's so good. That's so good. And, that's one of the things that author Jonathan Haidt talks about in The Anxious Generation in his book, and how much parents are really bringing that in. And there's kind of this parental culture right now, especially of just really helicopter surveillance, our kids in the quote unquote natural world, and letting them go check the mail by themselves or go down the street by themselves, and not tracking their devices constantly. And actually that's really important for their development. Yeah, we could get into that, but yeah, I love that. I think that's great. Yeah, I wish so many other places were like that. I even think, and this is controversial, but I mean, I thought a lot years ago about like if you gathered on a Sunday morning with your congregation, and before the service started, you just passed around this basket and asked everyone to put their phone into it. Obviously, who would do it? But I think it would just cultivate presence, just such a better presence with one another in these times of worship. I know we're reading our Bibles on our phones, but really, let's be honest. We are so addicted to these little screens. How cool would it be to kind of think of even our Sunday morning times as re-engaging with creation in this sanctuary space with one another, as we are all part of creation without these screens. Anyway, I'm not going to get on that soapbox, but
Preach on, amen. Yeah.
yeah. So we could go to that. So there's so many things I want to talk about with you. I love the I've never heard Farmette before, so I really love to use the term. Tell us a bit about that and kind of your home life and your little farm and kind of what you're doing there.
Yeah, so I call it a farmette because we are 5 acres that was carved out of an old dairy farm. And in the state of Wisconsin, you have to sell so many acres together. So 5 acres is kind of the minimum that you can kind of sell your land for that. So that's kind of where that farmette piece came from. When my husband and I got together in 1995, I told him, I said, someday we will live on a farm. And he's a city boy, grew up in Michigan, didn't really have pets or anything growing up. And 3 houses later, we are now on this farm. Like, this is where we ended up, and have been here now for almost 20 years. Part of it is when I worked for LabCorp years ago, we had a goat study where I learned how to milk goats because we needed to see if the test article was going to get in the mother's milk, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I learned how to take care of goats and do all of that with goats. And I told him I wanted goats. So we started with 2 goats when we moved here in, 2005 now, I think we moved in. Their names were Drake and Josh. You can guess which TV show was, because we had a young daughter at the time.
Okay.
They were fainting goats.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we had Drake and Josh started our farm. And then we started with some barn cats that I think we started with 5, and right now I have 17.
Oh my
They get
word.
food twice a day. They all get taken care of, and they all have names and no.
Have mercy. I think I just saw one.
Yeah, she was a barn cat that is now a house cat. But I've had over the years, I've had mini horses. So I have 2 right now. I've had a llama he was kind of the inspiration for the pastor and the pasture. I've had sheep. I've had other goats. I've had donkeys. Peafowl are actually peacocks. So the males are peacocks and the females are peahens. So peafowl. Right now, I think I have 14 of them, and then one just had 2 eggs hatch. So I have 2 little chicks running around, which are adorable. I'm trying to think what other animals I've had over the years. Oh, we've had guinea fowl. We've had ducks. Oh, I have a goose.
Wow. Oh, wow. Yeah. Sorry. Keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a goose that he chooses islands every day.
Man, you're busy. You got some things going on. You got yeah, that's oh wow, that's so cool. 5 acres, that ain't nothing. That's a lot.
Yeah, and most of the animals are not animals that I went out and searched for. The 2 goats that we started with, yes, but the rest have either been like they needed a home, somebody was going through a divorce, or somebody was going and they needed their donkeys to go somewhere else or whatever. I have rarely gone and searched out for animals. They usually have found me.
Well, is there a scenario that, in your work when there's like a retired guinea pig that could end up on your farm? You know what I'm saying?
Actually, yes. So I have had rats in the past. We had 2 rats. I am the mom where my daughter would go, "Can I have a pet rat?" And I said, "Well, you have to have more than one. They're social animals. You need to have like a whole." Yeah, they were not rats from the lab, but the lab does actually do adopt out. We have beagles and cats and ferrets and all of that. So there is that potential. I would have to be convincing my husband that I should have more.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
Yeah.
It just really struck me for whatever reason as you're talking, like how ironic it is that how ironic it is, like how much the plagues of history came to us, via rats, and then today how much I'm going to say the quote unquote healing of history comes to us via rats. I think that there's quite a bit of irony there that I don't think we see at all, right? Anyway, thinking about sort of the thread of like how people usually think about rats and snakes and spiders, and they get such a bad rap, but these are these are just other creatures, part of creation, and they anyway, yeah. There's a whole nother conversation, it makes me think about snake venom and, and how vaccinations come from, the venom and all this other stuff. And anyway, there's a whole thing there, but
Yeah.
So, I know, I don't know how much time we have, but I'd love to hear you mentioned the llama. So the pasture for the pasture, that's sort of like a colloquial thing you kind of came up with as an outlet. Am I hearing that right? That just sort of like as you're, is there a blog there? Tell us the story. Just start from the beginning. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. So when 2016 was rolling around and I was graduating seminary, and I knew that I did not want to be the pastor of a church. I knew that that's not where I was being called to. And when in the Baptist tradition, when you are called, when you're being ordained and going through all of that, you do a psych evaluation. And when I did my psych evaluation with Midwest Ministries, one of the last things they wrote on my psych eval is that animals need to be a part of whatever Carolyn does. So, talking with me and just being a part of my life, like animals have always been a part. So I found that interesting that is what was put in my evaluation as I was graduating. So I started this Facebook page, and at first it was called Prayers with Peacocks, because I thought maybe I could just say a prayer each day and just put it out there with a picture on the farm or whatever was going on. And then it when I graduated, my husband got me a horse trailer as my graduation present for seminary. And I decided that maybe what I do is I take this pastor in the pasture, because again, the animals talk to me in many different ways. And they speak to me. They tell me what's going on in the farm. I can walk out and tell if somebody's arguing, like if the goats are having a hierarchical thing or whatever is going on.
You're like God's Dr. Doolittle.
So this llama that I have, his name was Rogan, and unfortunately he passed last year. But my thought process was, humans are not kind to each other. We just aren't, for whatever reason. But how often do you get to hug a llama? And if I can get people to come and give Rogan a hug and just see that we can be kind to creation, and how easy it is to be kind to creation, can we be kind to one another and take care of that creation, and we are a part of that. So Rogan would come with me. My church, the Federated Church of Green Lake, my pastor is so willing to let me do different things. So I have brought my donkeys to church for Palm Sunday so that people could see the type of animal that Jesus rode in on, not this big stallion, but this lowly donkey. And, there's the legend of the cross on the donkey's back that not everybody has seen. So they got to see, and that's, it was Azel and Jasmine that I took for that. And the fact that Jesus could actually get a donkey to do anything is amazing to me, because I can't get my donkeys to get in and out of that trailer. So for Jesus to get that donkey to walk through that parade route and all of that, yes.
It was the true miracle of Palm Sunday.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
One Christmas Eve, my pastor let me bring in one of my baby goats that I had, actually two of them. Their names were Vibe and Flash. And I carried them in, and I told the story from the animal's perspective in the stable the night that Jesus was born. So just kind of giving a different perspective from that creation piece, and then talking about the sheep that were out with the shepherds and what did they see and witness. And then the llama, he loved everybody, except for some of the goats. He loved everybody. And just the fact I took him to several churches, the fact that people got to touch a llama, see their eyes, all of that was it was a great connector to get people to talk. And then I could start sharing a little bit more about, how do we care for our clean drinking water, our watersheds that we have? How do we care for even our pets? So I've done a lot of, pet blessings and that kind of thing as well. So it's, I've been able to, and been privileged to have the trust of people to bring these animals to their churches, to go in the church with, goats, and just kind of have this experience, which then, the pictures that I have of people looking at Rogan, my dad has come as my unofficial photographer, and just the images of wonder, like little kids looking up and adults just giddy about the fact that they got to feed a llama grain, and just kind of all of the selfies. And Rogan is probably in so many selfies that I've never seen with all of that. So, and I've taken him to camp, and I've taken the goats to camp. And if the listeners need to know a fun fact about llamas, they swim. I did not know they swim until I took him to the waterfront to just graze. And he just walked into the middle of a 50-foot lake, deep lake, and just was swimming away. They don't teach you in lifeguard class how to rescue a llama. So I really hoped he knew what he was doing.
That is fascinating. Yeah, I would have never. They've got that high neck, so there's already kind of a submarine thing happening there,
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I really, really want to hug a llama now, and I got to get that on my list. And honestly, I've talked to Emily at length about, I'd love to get a couple little alpacas or something. And obviously, one of the things that has happened is that not too long ago in history, so many of us lived in close proximity with these animals in the pasture with our lives, as our agriculture was more localized and just the way that we lived for so long. And now, in recent history, we have become so separate to these animals that we historically just did life with. And we don't really think about how, the good news that is that symbiosis, I'm going to say, between us and these animals, and how they nurtured our soil and how we lived together. I think that's just a really cool ministry. And I think, so much of the work involves even like showing up at local zoning hearings and advocating for, because legally I can't get an alpaca in my backyard at this point, and so there's all these barriers that we've created in order to keep separate, to sort of create this artificial modernity, odd neighborhood thing that we've made that is quote unquote, even though I could look out my window now, there's going to be some wild turkeys and coyotes meandering around, good luck codes, and so it's just this weird thing, but I think it's so important, and even to consider as churches, like how can we take some steps here, and I know that some churches on October 4th, right, do the or around that Sunday do the animal blessings sometimes. I think that's really good. I think that there's a lot of creativity to be had here, and that's really encouraging to hear, and it's sparking my imagination just as we're talking. But
well, and I think to your point too, with the modernity now of like people not understanding where their food comes from. I'm in the middle of an agricultural space. I'm surrounded by cornfields right now. And the corn that's being grown around me is not sweet corn, it's feed corn for cows, for steer, for all of that. And for people to be so disconnected from where is my meal coming from, and all of the hands and the people that support that behind the scenes. One of the coolest things that I saw one time with communion was just going back to where did this bread come from? And where was the grain that grew, that grew to create this bread, and all of the steps that it took to get to this point. Same thing with the wine or the juice, like all of the steps that it takes to get there to be able to even have communion. One of the pastors kind of went through all of that, and it's just amazing how we need to work through even to get to this grace-filled, sacrament.
Yeah. Oh man, that's such a good point. That's it right there. Carolyn, thank you so much for just taking some time and sharing your story and all this with me. And I feel like we might have to do a part 2 to raise some of these other threads. I guess similar to that, is there any last little bit of, advice or encouragement that you'd like to offer listeners from your perspective?
I'm going to say I used to be the weird lady in the office that had all the plants in her office, because I would get in my car that was in my garage, go to the office, be in my office all day, go home in the car. Like I was not touching nature. So I would have to create the nature in my space. What I just tell everybody is find a way to just touch it, be in it, whatever that is. And I know as it's getting darker now, it's harder to do sometimes, but just to find a way to touch the soil, to breathe in that air, to just all of the things that we are stewards of. You don't you don't think about being a steward of it until you realize how much you are a consumer of it as well. And what you are doing affects that.
Well, thank you so much, friend. I appreciate you spending some time with us here.
My pleasure.
All right. May you, my friends, go in the knowledge and the peace and the comfort that is the Spirit of our Lord Jesus Christ today. And I'm so thankful that we can be ecologically minded Christians together.